All right, now we're going to just go over the basics of working in Photoshop and just some of the very basic tools. When you open up Photoshop, you'll see a project bank here, and you can open one you previously worked on, or you can create a new one. I'm going to create a new one, and it's going to give me a choice of different formats, some prefab formats here. You can do recent if you do a particular type very often. If I go up here to print, I'm going to choose a standard 8.5 by 11, 300 pixel per inch. That's just kind of a common format. Now I tend to like 600 pixels per inch because that just is a good quality. So you can change that resolution over here. That means smaller pixels. The more pixels that you have per inch, the smaller they are, and the better your image is going to look. Now you might say, well, if 600 is good, then 2400 is even better. And that's actually true, but it's just that the higher this number is, the larger your file is going to be. And if you were doing an 11 by 17 poster with multiple layers, you would not want something extremely high. So I'm just going to pick 600 as kind of a minimum good quality document, and you can choose an orientation of vertical or horizontal. You can choose your background color. You can even do you can do black or white. Don't worry about the bits. We're just stick with 8-bit for now. Here's your color mode, RGB. If you wanted it to be grayscale or CMYK, you could do something different. So we are ready. So I'm going to click Create, and here's my document. And just so you can see, it's 8.5 by 11. Okay, it's up here. There's a ruler. It goes from 0 to there's 8.5, and then 0 at the left corner goes down. It cuts off. The screen's cutting off, but it goes down to 11. Okay, now let's talk about some of the basic tools that we have in Photoshop, how to use them. And let's just start. The easiest one to start with is maybe the brush, and that's several tools down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 tools down. So you click on the brush, and it's going to be, the color is going to be whatever is down here. These color chips, there's a foreground and a background. And you can change that foreground color. I can click on it, and I get my color picker, and it's got me in the orange family now, and I may say, well, I don't want that. So I can go over here, choose a different family, like the green family, and choose whether I want a dark green, a light green. Once I decide on what I want, I have to click OK, and then my color is changed, and now I can make a line with that paintbrush. I'm going to undo that, Command Z, because there's some other things we need to pay attention to. Once I pick a tool at the top, in this is called a modifier bar, and it's where I can make several changes. For instance, the type of brush. This is a round, hard-edged brush. If I can change that by clicking on this little down arrow, and the hardness I can turn down to 0, and it makes it very fuzzy. I can make the size bigger. I can make it a big size. There we go. See how it's now it's fuzzy. Whereas if I change the hardness of it, it's hard edged. Okay, so those are some settings you can have with a paintbrush. There's also this thing called opacity. That's how opaque is it. Right now it's at 48%, which means it's not 100% opaque. It's a little bit it's half transparent. Watch, if I cross back over what I've already made, then you can see how where the two overlap because it was 40% opaque. Now I can bump this up to 100% and just make a solid mark. Okay, I don't worry about flow too much. There is an airbrush mode, and I don't notice these two making a huge change. I'm able to get those effects with opacity and brush style. Smoothing is for other concerns that we'll deal with later. Pressure, if you have a tablet or you're working with a stylus, you can use this to adjust the pressure. And then there's a shortcut for making your brush smaller or bigger. It's on your keyboard, and it's the brackets. Okay, the left bracket makes it smaller. The right bracket makes your brush bigger. That's just a little quicker than going through here and sliding the slider and making it bigger or smaller that way. Okay. Now there's also other styles of brushes, but other than just the round one. You can click here, and then here's a galaxy of choices, like, you know, that right there. I'll see what that does. I may need to make it bigger to see the effect of it. Okay. You may say, well, I don't like that one. And then you may choose this. And some of these effects brushes, you can change the spacing. Like they have an amount of spacing before the pattern repeats itself. If you lower that amount of spacing, it becomes more of a continuous stroke. Let me change the color so we can see. That's one way to change it. I've also got these swatches. I can just pick one from here and get a color that way. Okay. So all kinds of brush options. Okay. And these things, brush tip shape, the defaults are pretty good. You can experiment with these on another day. Wet edges, build up, and scattering. This is when you want some painterly type effects, but just day to day, your usual basic use of brushes, I would just go with the defaults. Those are the brush settings. And then they've got some, if you click over here, you've got some prefab brushes that are made, like general. Then you got dry media, like chunky charcoal. Let's see what chunky charcoal does at a large size. You know, so there's neat stuff you can do. Wet blender. Let's make that big. Maybe change the color. And it's a blender. And kind of has a life of its own. It is very large, but it blends the color, so that's why you get a little bit of a mud. It's blending a couple of colors there. So anyway, brushes are fun to experiment with. So experiment with them. Have a great time with them. Hidden under the brush tool, there's also the pencil tool, which is basically it's very hard edged. It's almost like drawing a vector shape. You can soften the pencil. Well, let's see here. Let's try that again. And it doesn't really do anything because the pencil is the pencil. So that just by definition, it's a hard edge. But the brushes are harder edge. They do work, but they don't blend at the edge. So if you want a hard edge pencil, you can use that. Okay. So those are the two main functions there, the pencil and the brush that you can play with there. All right. Let's talk about the eraser. The eraser is a couple of tools, 3 tools down from the brush. And here's how it works. I've got the eraser tool and make it big enough that you can see. And I can just press and drag and whoa, wait a minute, it's turning black. And you may wonder, well, why is it turning black? I thought it was an eraser. The reason is whatever this background color is what it will erase to. So if I wanted white, I would have to actually click on that and turn the background color to white, and then my eraser will erase to white. And the eraser is just like the brush. You can change the opacity of it to where it erases like 50% or less or more. You can make it a fuzzy edged eraser, make it kind of cloud-like effects, and you can even change the style of the brush of the eraser. So it's in some ways it's a lot like the brush tool, but it erases to that background color. Okay. And those are some basic tools, just enough to kind of get you started. And there are other tools. There are vector tools here. There's a paint bucket here. There's a eyedropper, and we haven't even talked about layers yet. But I'm going to want you to just play with this for now, and we'll get into some of these other features next time.